Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Lucy Gray, and you are here for Actionable Innovations Global. And I need to hide my little toolbar there. We are a group that meets every week. Sometimes it's on Friday afternoons, sometimes it's Monday mornings, sometimes it's Wednesday evenings. But we're here to talk with people who inspire us, who are innovating in education somehow. Our group, Actionable Innovations Global, is an inclusive professional learning community. We used to be our own little entity that Don and I started last August. And we've blended it with another community that I started a number of years ago called the Global Education Conference Network. So we are now Actionable Innovations Global. We have a conference coming in November that we're really excited about, and we're partnering with World Savvy on that. But in the meantime, we're building community, trying to get people re-inspired after particularly difficult several years in education. And we're thrilled to have you here today to join us. We support and inspire education leaders. We host these conversations and we want you to connect with other people. So make sure that you throw your Twitter handle or your LinkedIn profile in the chat if you feel comfortable, and tell us who you are, where you're from, what your role is. We also write on Medium about educational innovation. Don has a new post up this week, actually, and so does Greg Bendis-Grab from Packer. And then we eventually are going to be working on a consultancy where we advise, advocate, and consult with schools. So that's, we have kind of the public nonprofit part of it, and then we'll have a consultancy at some point as we develop. But that's what we do. And if you want to know more about it, we'd love to have you be a part of the group at actionableinnovations.global. And if you're interested in speaking at these weekly meetings, or getting involved a little bit more deeply with writing or anything like that, please send me an email, and we'd love to have you join us and get more involved. You can follow us on social media. We have a YouTube channel where this recording will be later on today. We also, if you go to linktree/actionable, you can find our Medium publication and that sort of thing. So feel free to join us and engage. We'd love to have you share your work and your ideas and be part of this professional learning community. Today, feel free to introduce yourself, as I said before. If you want to tweet out any insights, any pithy takeaways from today's conversation, please do using the hashtag GlobalEd22, and try to keep yourself muted unless you're talking, because sometimes background noise can be a little distracting. So that's kind of our how we work. Linda is going to be interviewed by Don Buckley, my partner in crime here, and then we'll open up to questions. But you can also throw questions into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them as well. So I'd like to welcome Linda, who I met through Don a number of years ago at the School of Columbia. I think it might have been a ed camp, maybe, Linda. And she is an English teacher and assistant head of school at Sacred Heart in Greenwich, Connecticut. Here is her contact information if you would like to connect with her, and I will also put that in the chat. But Linda, I am so excited to have you here because it seems to me that you are really kind of a designer of learning experiences in a very creative way with kids. And so I'm excited to hear what you have to say today. And I will turn it over to Don to do his Proust questionnaire with you. And so take it away, Don and Linda.
Oh, gosh.
Great. Thanks, Lucy. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Don.
Welcome. So yeah, Linda's a friend. She's an ex-colleague and actually a current colleague as well, because I was working with her and some of her faculty all this year up in Greenwich and Sacred Heart, introducing them to design abilities and idea flow and stuff like that. And it was such great fun getting back to work with Linda again. She's so inspiring, and so highbrow. Her velocity of thinking is, she would say, it's her mind just runs, which I love. So it's great to banter with her. It's just this huge race of bop, 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 bop. But anyway, let's get started. So I'm going to start with the Proust questionnaire, which Linda will know well, is a, because I'm sure you've read many of Proust, a set of questions answered by the French writer Marcel Proust. And of course, it's actually used by some viewers today. Like I actually adapted it for education. But if you're a Vanity Fair reader, the back interview is always modeled on the Proust questionnaire. So Proust, the story of it is, for those of you who haven't been on the show before, is that Proust answered the questions in the form of a confession book. And this was a very popular parlor game in the Victorian times. And it's amazing as well how questions sort of transcend everything, and that sometimes they're so relevant, and these are. So I've taken Proust, or should I call him Marcel? I feel I know him so well, and adapted them for education. So they're really good as a starting point, just to really get the audience together on the same page, and also us to see another side of Linda that we may not see through the academic or work side. So here we go. And audience, please answer these in the chat if you want. We love to hear the different points of view. So Linda, first question for you is, which educator do you most identify with?
Oh my God.
And into
Plato.
the chat audience.
Plato and Socrates and the Stoics.
Wow. Okay. Mine is David Kelly. And so, great. Second question is, what words or phrases do you most overuse?
Probably the word wonder and curiosity.
Wonder and curiosity. Okay. Anyone in the chat answering here? What school would you most like to work at?
I'd like to work at a school. I'd like to work at the Stanford D School.
That's exactly was the answer that I have. If you go on to my Medium, that's exactly is the D School at Stanford, and the educator that as I said, that I identify with is David Kelly, and the educator that I admire most is Tina Selig, and they both teach at Stanford. You know what I mean? So
great.
she's amazing. If you guys don't know her, she teaches creativity at Stanford. David runs the D School and is a co-founder of the CEO. Last Proust question is, what is your favorite hero of fiction?
Oh my gosh. I have so many, but to narrow it down,
we can take three of them.
To narrow it down, I'm going to say Mrs. Ramsey in To the Lighthouse, because she's an archetype of female strength in a novel written in 1927.
Lucy says she thinks you should give more because you're an English teacher.
Well, I can give more.
Yeah, of course.
I want to talk about Emma Bovary in the 19th century French novel of adultery, because she's trapped and she's a seeker, and Flaubert always places her at the window because she recognizes how trapped she is. And of course, she's killed off at the end. And the other one I love is Hester Prynne in The Scarlet Letter, written by a man, because chapter 13 in that novel is so significant, because Hester Prynne, written by Hawthorne, men writing women are always fascinating to me, actually, in studies of gender. She dreams bigger dreams, and she travels from the old world to the new world on her own, and her husband actually allows her to do that, which is highly unusual for the time. Then she has this adulterous affair and starts over. Anyway, she's more or less successful in what she does. And she lives at the fringes of society, so therefore we know she's a disruptor. And I'm a big fan of disruptors.
Wow. Yeah. So Linda, it's every week I ask these. I sometimes use the same ones, sometimes I use different ones, but it's just always fascinating to hear people's answers and who their heroes are, or their most overused word. As everyone by now knows, I use the word amplify all the time. I'm sure you've heard me use it many times, Linda, as well.
Yeah.
And that. So yeah, did we get any in the chat, Lucy? Any brave souls?
Yeah, Jennifer Klein said all the heroines in the novels of Laura Esquivel, like Water for Chocolate. I was saying that, and she also said Mrs. Ramsey was awesome too. I'm an Elizabeth Bennet fan. I'm a Pride and Prejudice person. That's always stuck in my head since high school. So that's the character that came to mind for me. But just about every character that you've mentioned so far in book has been really my mother taught and loved. So I wish she were around to hear you, because I know that she would get a big kick out of what you have to say, Linda. But it's interesting to see that you have that in common. And Jennifer is also a former English teacher too, as well. So is here in the audience. So hopefully you guys will chit chat in a little bit.
I want to explain it, Don. I want to give an addendum to why the Stoics, because it's something that you've taught me in design thinking. The whole idea is the obstacle is the way, and I love to teach that to kids. That if there's an obstacle, it's a pathway. And think of it that way, and think of an obstacle or an impediment as something to leap over and find another way. And so I think, to me, it's a model going back thousands of years for sort of growth mindset, flexibility, and possibility.
Right, yeah, and obstacles are constraints, and constraints are really important in design, because we design with constraints. So that's great, Linda. So Linda, memory I have of you at the School of Columbia, where you were 7th grade. You taught English, but you were also the team coordinator. So you oversaw all of because we did a lot of collaborative teaching in that school. It was always sort of, mixing things up. But I remember one of and an assignment is a really dull word to use, but how your outcome of a novel that the kids wrote was, their challenge was to produce a trailer. Remember that?
Yeah, I love it. I still have it, the DVD.
Yes, so the students
an anachronism now, but yeah.
Yeah, and so what you were doing there is you were using a design ability, synthesize information before it was even thought about. But that's what was happening. You were the students, under your guidance, were synthesizing what they'd learned in the novel and producing a trailer. And I think what's great about that, and we're going to get to the bones of this today, that was all about relevance. How can we make this relevant how can we make it contemporary for the students so that they see a value in this thing? Let's use a methodology or a deliverable that they know well. So Lynn, I want to start with this, and I know you love Shakespeare and teach Shakespeare. And my first question is, can you take the audience through on how you teach Hamlet?
I would love to, but prior to that, because I'm an English teacher, I have to say one other thing, and I'll point to it up here in back of me. The question that is operative for me every day, back to the wonder and the curiosity, is this: ask yourself a simple question every day. Would you want to be a student in your class? And so that's my operating principle. So how do I teach Hamlet? I love teaching Hamlet. Because the goals of an English teacher are pretty simple, actually. They're to understand complexity and ambiguity, to have the students close read and annotate, and then they need to write evidence-based arguments and claims, evidence, and analysis. So how do you get to that hard task? You start simply. So teaching Hamlet is really fun because the opening line is 2 words with a question. It's a question. And I call this the Vasu theory of literature, which is that everything unfolds from the title or the opening. And when we begin to think about that, and Lucy, this applies to the opening lines of Pride and Prejudice uttered by Mrs. Ramsey. But the first line of Hamlet is who's there? It's a question. And so I just say that to my students. So what does that mean? Do a think, pair, share, get in small groups and unpack the significance of that. What do you notice about those words? And it's pretty simple. And I ask them to think mathematically, actually. So who's there is a question. Why is it a question? What's a question mean, everybody? Ask yourself some questions. And the question is an atmosphere of doubt and ambiguity and unknown. And then we just go to math. I say, hey, is there a mathematician in here? How would you designate that? And so we get to X is the unknown. And if X is the unknown, you've got a complete atmosphere of mystery and possibility there. So that's kind of how I look at Hamlet. It's also what do they notice? I ask them to think about a text as a simulation, which it is. It's a fictional universe. It's a creation, and in many ways, it's a false narrative. It's created and crafted by a writer. So what do they notice? What are the rules of the universe, kids? What do you see in the first three? What do you see in the first three scenes? Who's speaking the most? Who isn't speaking? And I give them these ideas. Who's a real yacker in this? Who isn't? What's going on here? What's the setting? Who follows the social order? Who resists? So adolescents love that. They love to find the disruptor. So in that way, I try to make the text relevant. And I give them a schema. And I tell them you need to go look at the setting and you need to go look at keywords. Shakespeare's very difficult to read. So what do you do when you find an obstacle or a thorny bit of text? Power through. The obstacle is the way. Keep going until you find the one or two lines that you do understand. And then we can talk about what you notice there and what's going on. But the big goal for me, certainly, and I teach high school English, is asking them to read beyond a summary and description and asking them to sort of figure out the important issues that are going on. So other things, the way I teach Hamlet, I give them a PDF, and this is a little bit of using the digital humanities kind of framework. I give them a PDF and I ask them when we're noticing who speaks the most, because they notice that all the men are speaking. Yikes, this must be about monarchy and patriarchy. And why is that? So I then set them free to work on their own. And then we do what I call sort of diagnostics. I put them in small groups and I give them a task. And the learning task is to figure out how many speech lines Hamlet has, how many speech lines Ophelia, two female characters, Ophelia has, how many speech lines Gertrude has. So it's something like 360, 69 for Gertrude, 59 or something for Ophelia. So what are they doing? They're mining the text for data. They become data analysts. And then they need to draw some conclusions because they do come up with what the speech lines are. And then we need to ask, I tell them now you need to do that terrible thing. You need to think about what that means. In other words, yeah, you've got the data here. What's the significance of it? What's the meaning of it? And so they come up with this idea that they're in a patriarchal world here, a universe. The rules of the universe here for female characters are to be subservient. And then we kind of figure out who breaks that mold and how that happens. So it keeps going basically with this. I had a fascinating a group of students this year because we worked on nature moments, actually. I wanted to bring eco-criticism and the environment into the classroom. And they discovered that the only character who was really associated with nature was Ophelia. And because she falls off a branch and eventually dies, and she speaks in botanical code. So we do some research. I give them a LibGuide. I work with the library directors and I give them some links to botanical code. And what they discover is the big task is, hey, let's reclaim Ophelia. Let's reclaim the female voice and how does it operate? And then we need to examine Hamlet as well. So Hamlet, they go to the soliloquies and I give them a word, polymorphic. I say this is a play that's Shakespeare's longest play, but it's also got sort of the most velocity. Hamlet is set in motion from the moment he returns and to the court. So how do I contextualize this? It's pretty easy. What could be more awful to a kid than to be called back from college and told that his father is dead, that his mother has married his uncle, and that he's never going to be going back to college? I mean, that is an awful situation that is very relatable to adolescence, and the long discussions about what that must feel like, long discussions about their own fathers and mothers and who rules that universe and why they had to come back. So that's my sort of way with Hamlet. But they came up this year with a very interesting thesis, because you always want to get to the so what and so why does it matter, and look at a text from 15,000 feet. And that's sort of part of what I do with the computational thinking, which is sort of first you do deconstruction. I took a course at Iste in computational thinking. First, it's decomposition or deconstruction, looking at scenes or speeches, and then it's pattern recognition, who's speaking, who isn't, and then it's abstraction. It's like zooming up and out of this text from the 15,000-foot view. And that's this. There's a language of distress, and they notice this, that Hamlet's soliloquies are about his distress and his discomfort. And Ophelia's are about obeying until she speaks in code and becomes kind of aggressive. Ophelia's madness is actually a language of distress that is her authentic language. And then we get to sort of algorithms, like what can they do with this and what formula that can they take away from this. And they came up with some really interesting ideas about that this is a play really about suppressed new ideas, and the new ideas are represented by Hamlet and Ophelia.
Wow, wow. Yeah, Linda, it's mind-blowing. It blows me away how you can just take this story, because to me, I never saw myself as someone that was good at literature, even though I'm fascinated by everything and read. But to hear you deconstruct something like that is just amazing. I mean, you use words like surprise, moments, complexity, ambiguity, patterns. This is the language of design. It's the language I speak. And I guess that's to hear you surface it in something that's written as text just blows me away. So thanks for that. Does anyone in the audience have a question for Linda, or will I move on to my second question?
Yeah, my question was the course from Iste. I would love to hear a little bit about that. And I put a link in the chat. I'm not sure if it's the one that you took. But I think having some, practice or somebody guiding you in how to infuse.
Can you see this? This is a small little manual. I took the online course. I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. Cool. And you thought it was
superb. I mean, it was an online course. What I mean is support. I've taken a lot of webinars and online courses during the pandemic. They become a little bit iterative, but I think as teachers, experienced teachers, we can pick and choose what we like. It was excellent because it spurred me to think about how I could give my students a systematic way, and a systems thinking approach, which they all write back and thank me for, a systems thinking approach to kind of digging into complex texts. And so I think it was very, very helpful, and also working with colleagues. I think they keep offering it, actually. I'll go look at the chat and see if it's the one.
Okay, yeah, I think it's also fascinating how you are approaching this through the lens of your students too. Like, what would be appealing to them? What would be interesting to them? What fits with their schema, as you mentioned earlier. So it's brilliant. Thank you.
We had a theme for our school this year, though, which is called joyful learning, and what we meant by that was really kind of rigor, joyful rigor. Like, how do you teach rigorously, but make it fun? And so that's my object is kind of, my goal is to make it kind of fun. So back to algorithm, I invited the math people into my class too, and we deconstructed to be or not to be. It's back here. I don't know whether you can see it. And they take notes on it. So it's sort of Venn diagram stuff. What's to be or not to be? Can you see this? So it's because not all of my students, thank goodness, are going to graduate and want to be English teachers. But I want to teach them to bridge silos and that what they're learning in the math class, right? So here's the x equals the unknown. That's an independent variable, right? And here's this to be or not to be, right? This whole idea about how they can use bridge silos and kind of do cross-disciplinary work when working with a difficult text like Hamlet and make it a little bit fun.
Right.
Because I asked them to remember 2 or 3 things. They don't need to remember everything. They're reading this for the first time. It's not about content.
Right. Oh, wow. Awesome. But Linda, what you said resonates with me, that like maybe 1% of the people you teach will be an English teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
And most of you know that I'm an ex-chemist. I worked in my first career as a pharmaceutical chemist. And that's why I say to chemistry teachers all the time, really, you think the bulk of your kids in here are interested in chemistry? They are not. And don't worry about it. 1% are, and that 1% will figure things out. But I think we have to step back as content experts and just see, hey, not everyone's interested in it. You are. I love chemistry. You know, I mean, I'll do it all day long and still will. But, you know, we need to be aware that not all the kids are like that, or our students. And I love that you point that out. You know, you're not expecting them to be English teachers. That's not anything on you. So Linda, let's jump to the next book. So in a recent conversation you and I had, you brought up the Great Gatsby, and you said, hey, Don, you know, the Great Gatsby is just about 9 social gatherings. And I'm like, what? Oh, I had no idea. So can you tell us though, what are those 9 social gatherings?
It's actually 15 because I reread it.
Oh my, okay, so now we have 15.
Or more. And so that's how I teach. That's how I love to teach the Great Gatsby. People love to teach Hamlet as a revenge play, or you could teach Gatsby as a noirish kind of murder mystery. But I want to engage my students, and so what are students all about? Like going to party, I call it party time. Excellent. Let's go look for the social gatherings in this novel. 9 beautiful chapters, so incredibly well structured. Speaking of systematic thinking. So I divide them into groups. And when you look at the 9 chapters, oh my gosh, there's party time everywhere. And how does party time work, actually? Well, you've got Jordan Baker, a character, saying, oh, I love big gatherings. You can be more intimate there. And then you've got which is an odd statement, but you've got kids who are always gathering at parties, or they're gathering sort of, we have in the sort of student center here. And so what's that about? What could be more relevant to them than in-group, out-group, right? FOMO and YOLO, right? Who's missing out? Am I invited? Am I not invited? You know, you only live once, so let's go have fun. And this whole idea that Fitzgerald is working with, which we kind of do in a little sort of linguistic algorithm, is basically this idea of fun chaos that goes to sort of, that goes to accidental chaos that becomes violent chaos. So this whole idea of disorder and chaos is something that we work with here. And they love that idea. So I set them free. I assign chapters and they work in groups. They do a lot of mapping too. We have whiteboards all over the classroom. And so what are they looking at? They're looking at the social occasions, who's in, who's out, what characterizes it. So lots, okay? You've got glittering lavish parties. You can see class differences. You've got a ton of alcohol because it was prohibition, right? An alcohol like adultery, which occurs in the novel, is fun but unethical at the time. So we get to look at who are the rule breakers, who are not, and what's the deal with this guy Gatsby giving these elaborate parties that he's never at, and he actually doesn't drink at them. So we're looking at this idea of excess and materialism, and then the aftermath, sort of trauma and violence, and that occurs early on when there's a car accident leaving one of the parties. So my school is in a suburban setting. We always joke about the 10th grade accidents, people running over each other's feet because they have learner's permits, but it's something that the students can relate to here. This idea of parties and that kind of just tip and veer into chaos. So that's how I teach that, basically.
Right. So Linda, when you were telling me that, we were talking about the Great Gatsby a couple of weeks ago, and you mentioned, the social events, of course, I instantly said, so how could we apply social media, again, a relevant thing of the day-to-day of all our students? And now I'm thinking 15 TikToks maybe.
Yeah, exactly. What TikToks would be great. TikToks, we do playlists, right? Do a playlist for each of the scenes. Do a visual. So exactly, or TikTok or whatever. But again, using social media or what is inspiring. I'm back to wonder and curiosity. What are you curious about? What do you wonder about? And how would you update this a little bit? And that's a cool idea, Don. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see it. And they love TikToks. I'm up at Marymount a couple of days a week teaching the design abilities class. And I've noticed that all of the students have commandeered a big lobby, and that's where all the TikToks are being made in public. So at the middle of the school, they're and it's hilarious. I watch them do it, and they're so enthusiastic about it. It's their world. And I thought, God, what joy is this? Because they're there shooting their TikToks, and you can see them because they're they're moving and all the antics. It's hilarious. But keeping with Gatsby, Linda, another conversation around this that we had is that you pointed out to me that all of the things that happen are moments. And moments are huge in design because they create memory. Designers are always trying to create moments. So my question is, how does a writer craft or design these moments if we take the Great Gatsby, and how do we get to notice these moments?
So this is back to kind of decomposition and deconstruction. So I would ask them to look at how a chapter is composed. And writers typically, and those who teach writing ask, and I teach college essays, and I say, explode a moment, take a tiny moment, and I actually use the Proust questionnaire to gain insight. We don't need to write the big trauma essay, the house burned down essay, or something like that, or I didn't win the election essay. We need to write about a tiny moment and explode that moment. And that's what writers do so beautifully. And so how do you do that? What are the elements of that? And so we would deconstruct a scene. There's I think it's chapter 3 is the party scene with in Gatsby there's an enormous party scene that begins with crates of oranges coming. I mean, it's like an Amazon warehouse is unloaded at the Gatsby mansion of all kinds of things. And so we talk about that. And my students came up with that, that Gatsby was like the Kardashians, which was, what they related it to. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, the excess, the opulence, the glitter, the false glamour. And so then they wondered what was underneath all of that. Yeah, it's chapter 3, I think, with the great party. But yeah, so you deconstruct that. You ask them, what are the patterns? What do you notice? Again, you're mining the text for data, and you're taking a look at how that scene, and these are vignettes, and what happens in modernism, which is why it's fun to read Gatsby and more contemporary novels, is, and I only actually lately like to teach short works and short chapters. I have to say, even War and Peace has short chapters. It's 1,000 pages, but short chapters are little scenes and vignettes where a writer has crafted something because they want us to practice a great book, The Art of Noticing. This is a cool book, everybody. What is it? The Art of Noticing, Rob Walker. I can send all this stuff. But teaching kids to notice, right? And that's what you need to do when they're reading. And that's what I like to ask them to do. What do you notice when you're reading this? So I stay away from content. So I do something also called with Gatsby or with anything called a 3-2-1. It's, I ask them to find 3 things they notice, 3 takeaways from the reading section. 2, I call them microcosmic passages, 2 passages that are windows into the text that strike them, that they wonder about or notice. And 1, I call it sparking question or big question that they'd like to bring to the class to ask in a Socratic seminar or Harkness discussion. And that's a trigger for that. And so what they're doing when they're looking at how a writer has crafted that moment, it'll be something little, like why were there oranges there? Why were there crates of oranges might be a question instead of crates of alcohol or whatever. But they ask those questions and any question goes. So, because again, you want this to be safe for any kind of exploration.
Right, right. But Linda, you know, you use the word notice. A trait of an innovator is to be a great observer. And that's exactly what you're doing. They are learning the attribute of observation. And I probably told you I have this, I often start class with this thing called a wonder wander. So I come in the room and I shout wonder wander, and the students grab their observation notebooks and they head off out and sort of roam around the building. The objective is, hey, notice something that you didn't before and write it down, and we come back and we talk about it. It's caused a lot of controversy because like they get stopped by teachers saying, hey, why are you out of class? And they're like, oh, we're on a wonder wander. And they're like, what's a wonder wander? And it started this whole cult of observation. It's very funny, but you know, they're learning to be good observers, even if it's like I say, take a different route to class. But it's so important that they learn to notice. So Linda, there's a current interpretation of Macbeth that just hit Broadway with Daniel Craig and the Irish actress Ruth Negga, whom I'm huge fans of both of them.
Right.
And it's directed by Sam Gold, and he's done some other Shakespeare as well. I'm blanking on it, but anyway, you know what it is it's a contemporary version of Macbeth on Broadway, and not to be a spoiler, I haven't seen it yet, but I've been reading the reviews. But like, there's one thing that I thought was just hilarious, that after Macbeth kills someone, in this case Daniel Craig, he sits down and opens up a can of Miller Lite. And I was like, oh, wow, like what would Macbeth have opened up? But anyway, thinking about that, Lynn, I'm thinking, how do you make Macbeth relevant for your students?
I love teaching Macbeth, and I teach it to 10th grade students. And you could teach it earlier though. I do it this way, and it's so, again, you make it relevant. I mean, what could be more relevant now when all we're seeing is war and desecration than a veteran returning from war, an honorable soldier returning from war with PTSD and wreaking havoc because he's taken the values of dehumanization and wartime and applying them to home. And so that's hugely relevant to kids. So I love that idea of opening the can of Miller Lite. It might have been, you know, a glass of mead, or I don't know what it would have been, but mulled wine, I don't really know, or actually a witch's brew, who knows? But I love that idea, makes it immediately relevant. And it's relevant. My students will also read the Odyssey, and the Odyssey is also about the same thing, exile and return. That's Odysseus is returning from war, right? And so that's that idea. He's a veteran returning home to his native land as well. So this idea, I think, sets the context of making it relevant. And then I do my fun algorithm thing. So fun. At the opening scene, right? Oh, we spend a long time acting that out with curtains and hammering and all kinds of sound effects, because The weather is chaotic. It's, again, we're talking about chaos here and disorder, right? And a crazy moral universe, kind of like the one we're living in now, a little bit. But there are 13 lines in the opening scene. We deconstruct, and it ends with the witches, 3 witches, hurly burly. And so I got this here, right? It ends with fair is foul and foul is fair. And that's oh my gosh, we have 70-minute classes. We spend maybe 60 minutes. I said, so what does that mean? What is fair is foul and foul is fair? And so I say, you know, look at the setting. It's thunder and lightning. What if it were bright sky and smiley faces? It's not, okay? So we need to kind of figure out what's going on. And the mathematicians get up, and that's girls who are taking code get up, and we do this whole algorithm. X equals Y, and then it's U, Y equals X. If justice equals injustice and moral equals immoral, we are in a crazy universe here. And that's the setting. So we take a look at Macbeth. And so once we begin that and talk about witches as supernatural, and they all have images of witches at Halloween and good witches and bad witches and all of that, it's really kind of cool, fun for them to think about that. So we even go even more. X equals Y, Y equals X, and we go to this negative infinity, comma, infinity. You're in a world with no boundaries, and you are really, when witches interrupt into the world of the human. And then we talk about interpretation. This is back to, you know, listening. Why is it that, and I just say, hey, would you want to know right now your fate? Would you want to know where you're going to college? Do you want to know that? And then we have long discussions about that, because Macbeth wants to know his fate, and he thinks the witches will deliver that to him. So these are all angles into the text to make it relevant to kids.
Right. No, well, it's, yeah, like I see it like points of view. So you're looking at it through many different lenses, and one of them usually will work with one kid, and not just having one way of delivering. You know what I mean? That's what's so great. So my last question, Linda, and we'll open it up to our audience then, is in another conversation we had, you were explaining to me this thing called eco-criticism, and how that applies in your teaching. So can you tell the audience a bit more about that, and how it applies to your English lit teaching?
Well, again, it's about relevance, and a lot of young people now, thankfully, are interested in, you know, climate change and the preservation of our planet. So I developed a new course, actually, using similar text, but it was called it's called Into the Woods, Down the River, and Up in the Air. I'll actually be presenting on it at the National Coalition of Girls' Schools in June. But I did a lot of work over the summer developing this new course. This is a book called Ecological Literacy. It's an excellent book. I can put all this, I'm going to share a deck when I'm done with this, but it's an old book, but it's Educating Our Children for a Sustainable World, edited by Michael K. Stone. And what I wanted to do was to take a relevant issue. My students are also interested in food insecurity. And this became really evident during the pandemic, when we have a lot of service trips and food pantries were empty and everybody was locked inside. So there's a ton of stuff now. Here's The Meal That Reconnects. Here's literature and food studies. So this was really cool, and I have a whole bibliography. What I wanted to do was focus on the environment. How do I bring the environment into the classroom and make this relative? And so we did this in with Hamlet, actually, and with To the Lighthouse, and with Beloved. And I'm back to what will you remember and what do we want? I mean, I've read those books a ton of times, but they're reading it for the first time. And so they would, oh my gosh, Beloved, outdoors, indoors, 124, the house is haunted. Baby Suggs is associated with the clearing. There's a big feast in that. To the Lighthouse devotes 32 or more pages to the Buff en Daube scene, etc. So how do I do that? I ask them, when you're reading, focus on the nature moments. And what do you think this writer is doing? Why is everybody trapped inside Elsinore except for Ophelia outside? Or why is baby Suggs outside in the clearing preaching? What is this about? And what they discover, which is very sort of aligned with that nature inspires awe and freedom and a sense of curiosity and wonder, looking at worms and all kinds of things. And so the choke cherry, and so they look at the trope of trees throughout Beloved, for example. Why all those trees? And why the choke cherry tree, the scar on the back of Sethe. So they take a look at all those moments. Again, we're parsing and looking at moments back to exploding the moments. What is Morrison saying here? Okay, what she's saying? Well, what she's saying, I mean, among many things, is that being trapped in a house was toxic and awful for enslaved peoples. They had absolutely no freedom. And then you can take it to Huck Finn, who's always slithering out the window. He wants to be outside and wild and free. And then we can take it to them. Hey, let's go outside, Don, on a wonder walk. Let me free you from this terrible confines of the classroom. So we can just take it out from there.
Right, right. Awesome. Well, Linda, that was fascinating. And thanks for coming on the show today. I'm going to open it up to our audience for questions. And if you want to share your deck in a bit, that's fine as well. Lucy, do you have any closing comment for Linda before we open it up?
Well, you're so gifted, Linda, at being able to craft these experiences, really. And I'm wondering a couple things. One is, are you coaching any teachers or teaching any teachers in any way? The kind of your approach. I think it's hard to directly teach it, but you're modeling it. You can model it for people and they can pick up things. So I'm wondering if you're doing that, if you're doing any kind of work with other teachers.
I am coaching, actually, and people do come to visit my classroom. I'm actually thinking of writing a book a little bit about how to do this. But what we're really talking about is synthesizing ideas, right? And the capacity to synthesize ideas. And I find that the new generation of students are much better able to do that if their teachers break away from content. And my goal in the literature class has been to hack the essay. There's nothing more boring for a teacher or a student than read the text, then write the essay, read the text, and write another essay, read the text, and write another essay. And it just becomes incredibly boring. So how do you mix that up? And so that's what I tried to teach, how to be an agile thinker. That's actually one of my biggest goals for students. And it's really, and I've learned this from our graduates who write back and say, wow, I got into MIT and I thought I was going to be in the engineering program and building a solar car, but it's a consumable. I don't want to do that. I want to use my education to think about biodiversity and mutual flourishing for all species. And that's my goal. That's agile thinking, basically. I love the big question, how to convince the more traditional lit teachers. That is a challenge, okay? They just need to observe. And then you invite Don in. Actually, we created an innovators pod at my school. It was a really interesting way to do that, to get the more complacent folks to get on board with teaching literature. But not even in literature, I've observed in my new role this year, oh my gosh, science classes I've observed classes that have been traditional, that have been agonizing for me to sit through in a way, because they're so content focused and so teacher focused. So I tried to keep it, I gauge, reading the room is key. When the legs start shaking and people start moving around, you need to change the topic or the subject. So I try to do that. But how do I get people to shift their thinking? Coaching, observing, giving faculty walkthroughs, and giving a couple of tips like direct your attention here, or why don't you try that? And the 3-2-1 is caught on in a number of other classes. And then we had Don in. We created an innovators pod. it's kind of like that, like Gatsby's social parties. We invited folks whom we thought would be open to this idea, and we didn't invite folks whom we thought wouldn't be open to the idea. We being our leadership team. And suddenly everybody was interested because there was FOMO, fear of missing out. And so we got more and more people on board. And we had 2 workshops like that with Don. And then eventually we had an all faculty group. And so it suddenly became kind of cool to try something new. And that's what we've been working on. What's one thing that you could do new in a different way?
And the teachers get to observe you too, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And then we've had expos. We had, because we've been doing peer-to-peer faculty, which I think is much more efficacious actually, to do peer-to-peer professional development days. Instead of sending people out, which is a kind of one and done, we've been doing expos. So we did a big one actually for Earth Day, bringing the environment into the classroom, and we did nature poems and all of that kind of thing. Back to that idea. And then I learn a lot by visiting classes. There's a 7th grade science teacher who's fascinating. So we had something called Open Door October, which I would recommend, and Wake Up in February or something. We required our faculty to visit one other class in another subject area and or another division. And I think that gets that's like a wonder walk, basically.
Right.
It gets people to think a little bit differently.
Yeah, yeah. Tracy here in the lab had a question.
Well, sort of a comment, but let me see if I can put it in words because it's just been in my brain. I was thinking about how, like Don and I have talked about this, like, you know, when you say you're teaching whatever your subject area is, and you're kind of like, okay, this is it, I'm passionate about it. I'm a historian, or I'm a literature, whatever, or I'm a, and chemist. But the idea that like not all the students in the class, that's not their interest, especially in high school. Like we're not in a PhD program, right? We're in high school,
Exactly.
or whatever. And the idea I just wanted to comment on like the idea where like the mathematicians in the room or the scientists in the room or whatever, like acknowledging that when the students are in your classroom, you're not trying to make them all literary, whatever you are.
Scholars.
Yeah, right. And I think that that's something that teachers do. And I don't think they do it. I don't think they realize, like, I think they're trying to make it passion, like, kind of share a passion, but it's not right. Like I always think, like I do steam maker kind of stuff, and I realize that not everybody loves that.
And that's fine.
But you can, so your goal isn't necessarily to make everybody love it or to just think that way. It's to kind of be able to like look through those different lenses and things like that, and bring those ways that people look to things. I don't know. I'm kind of babbling. I'm sorry, because I'm just listening. But
I love what you're saying, because I also bring students into the makerspace, and they get so flummoxed there. They can barely do anything there, and I ask them to create a 3D object from a driving theme in a text. What you're saying is true. And a lot of colleagues do want to do that. So I say, where the artists in the room, we're doing a visual mapping, right? How would you take this up a notch? We do a lot of mapping, and some of them use so I give them sort of the skills for visual thinking. But yeah, the artists in the room, the chemists in the room, the physics in the room, we talk about tangential relationships. Why is that we see this character once and not again? I said, that's a tangential relationship. Hey, physicists, what's that mean? And then I say, hey, you've been on exchange. You went on exchange. I know you all made friends, but you may never see them again. But you bonded. That's a tangential. So it's about being able to have those experiences. Right at your fingertips to engage, because to me, that's what it's about. Teaching's about that.
And to be able to, oh my God, I just had it in my head, but to acknowledge, like, here's what I want to say, like, to acknowledge that the way that people, like, it could be people, but we'll say students, you know, if the students are being engaged in a text, is not going to be the same, all the same way.
Exactly.
And you can't hope for that. Like you know, people, you do that anyway in terms of like, oh, what's your idea or what's your interpretation? But you're still kind of working with that idea of interpretation, or that there's a point of view or whose perspective. But if you really break things open and try to really understand that, people get all sorts of different things out of texts, you know, whatever those texts may be.
And that's how I learn. It's like this: Houston, work the problem. Here's this text. How are you going to work the problem? I love hearing what they think about this text from 1606, because that's what makes that text relevant. That's who cares about my interpretation.
Yeah, and it's that, like, that whole idea of content. I don't understand it. I had a conversation recently where someone was talking about content being equal to rigor, and I didn't understand what that meant, you know, because I think of rigor as a verb, you know, in a sense, and content isn't really a verb, or maybe my interpretation of content isn't a verb, but you know what I mean? Like it's not, rigor is something that the student is actively doing, not rigor isn't something that's transmitted to a student. Anyway, maybe I don't know what rigor is. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, but you know what I see that as, like, you know, people think if you're having fun or you're playing, you're not doing work. I mean, that's nonsense.
I totally agree with that. To me,
and just like because you're having fun doesn't mean you're rigorous, you know. I mean, but this is a common belief with educators, you know, that if you're having fun, it's not rigorous. You're not working. Come on. Of course, you know, I mean, it's about play, it's about inspiring, it's about joy, as you said. If the kids aren't joyful in the room, you've got a much bigger problem. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, any more questions for Linda out there?
I have one. How are you using your makerspace? How are you taking advantage of that in your school? You alluded to that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Oh my gosh, I love using it. I haven't this year because I was walking around with a measuring tape because we were still masked and distanced. But next year I plan to use it. Typically what I'll do is I say, okay, now you've read Beloved, okay? Or you've read To the Lighthouse. Let's go down into the and it's part of my hack, the essay. So we go down into the makerspace, and I bring the art teacher in because I think it's really important to get interdisciplinary. We're working on that more and more, and it's been a very big challenge. And I say, you're going to work. First, they start with a visual map. You're going to look for a driving theme or an image from this novel, and then you're going to create a three-dimensional object from it. And not color. It can be in black and white, and I bring in corkboard black and white, and I teach them how to use those those dangerous knives, and glue guns, etc. And I use work from. I'm inspired by the Columbia Laboratory of Literary Architecture. Fantastic programming there. I wrote about this actually in something that Eric Walters published, but yeah, so that's how I do that. And that's like a 2-week project. And then they glue together and they come up with some amazing thing. We did it with Frankenstein too. It was really incredible. They did a hand of creation in wire. The first 2 days, they're utterly stymied. So I show them some Calatrava bridges or architecture or whatever, and inspire them a little bit with some really interesting architectural 3D objects. And then they're kind of off and running. And it gives them a chance to make and create and use their hands. It's fun. Yeah, good. You put that in.
I found the link. I think it's helpful for high school I think high school teachers have a hard time making connections to maker spaces, particularly because schedules are not necessarily
right
to it. And so that's why I was curious about that. And I'm sure Tracy has a few ideas on that too. Tracy works with upper school students, right?
Oh, does she? Yeah.
Yeah, and Tracy was also teaching art history this year, so that was really interesting, merging art history with the makerspace and the Metropolitan Museum, right, Tracy?
Yeah.
That was
So Tracy, I'd like to work with you because I teach Faulkner As I Lay Dying as a Cubist novel, and do a lot of connections with art history as well, and with To the Lighthouse as an impressionist novel. Be fun.
I think teachers, I think all of us have been thinking as we're listening to you, like, gosh, I wish we could be in your class. I think you guys should should do some workshops on this for teachers. I think you
That would be great. We should figure out how to do some workshops on how to do that with a group like this. It would be great. I think.
Yeah. And you should meet Jennifer, who's a client and who's in the chat, because she's absolutely brilliant with curriculum too. Jennifer, do you have any questions or observations or anything you want to share today?
Jennifer, where are you?
Hi there. Sorry, I wasn't using the video. I've just been getting all this other stuff done, and I've got a workman showing up shortly. But I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Oh,
and
nice.
I love what you're sharing. I left the classroom 12 years ago, 13 years ago now, to do consulting and writing of my own in the educational space. And I really appreciate your point about, the way that these sort of design strategies work inside the literature class. I think, I've asked my biggest question, which was about, trying to shift the needle with people who still really love the content and love to talk about their own views. And I know so many literature teachers who I think are really mired still in that, and they take the life out of literature. So I loved what you said. I think the point, well, and even some of the dissection sometimes gets to the point where the literature seems dead, right? I think it's a Virginia Woolf line, we kill to dissect.
Yeah, we murder when we dissect. I think
there you go.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah.
It's really awful. And I was lucky enough to teach ninth grade most of my career, where I didn't have to do as high level literary analysis, and actually parents and administrators were thrilled that kids were just excited to read and excited about the themes, right? So, but I wonder, I guess maybe I would ask, are you finding that the Socratic seminar, the Harkness, the spider web, all of those different strategies for discussion, are those kinds of small steps that teachers can use to shift the needle?
What a great question.
To get that?
What a great question. So I've been teaching, trained in Harkness since 1996. I mean, I brought a Harkness table format to the school at Columbia. I was the only one who did it. I'm the only one doing it here. I think there were 3 or 4. We have a faculty of 100 something. It's really sad because, and it's fear, it must be, because what it does is it takes away from sage on the stage, or, stand and deliver. And I always say to the girl, they say, well, what do you think, Mrs. Vasu? And I say, I want to hear what you think. I could rattle on about this forever, right? Well, let's do that outside of class. It's such an important idea. Harkness is key to it, I think. Just the way we're having a conversation now, there's sort of some back and forth. And I felt before I was talking too much about what I do with Hamlet. I'm very keen, but that reading that room and what's enough. And it's still, it's something I'm working on. That less is more and deep is important, because I have to focus on what you're talking about, which is the takeaway. What are they going to take away? They're reading this for the first time. And maybe it's just the joy of reading, or maybe it's just the joy of working on a problem. This weird Hamlet text or beloved.
I love it. I've got somebody at the door now, but I love the answers. And I will say that in the new book that I just finished, we name all 3 of those strategies, the Harkness, the Socratic, and the spider web, as strategies for teachers that allow students to really run the conversation and therefore be protagonists in their own learning, which is so important.
It's all about the student experience. And I think teachers forget that. It's not about me ever. It's about who's out there. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll be right back to keep listening, of course. Sorry.
Yeah, Jennifer is a really gifted educator, and so I'm glad that you guys got to meet each other.
Yeah, great.
So I thank you, Linda, for everything. This has been fantastic, and we're happy to have you as part of our community, and you're welcome to come talk anytime or write for us or whatever you want to do. And I think the idea here is that people are going to be connected, even though we're small but mighty. The idea is that we're going to build those connections that are really, and those relationships that are really important to our livelihood. And I think those synapses need to be reconstructed after COVID, because we've all haven't been together or doing things professionally for our own development. So anyway, that's kind of why we're here. Don, anything else you want to wrap up with?
No, Linda, you know, you're an inspiration. Every conversation with you gets me thinking, and I'm like, oh my God. But I love the idea of you writing a book, because maybe you and I can weave this into our innovation, because we started this group to write a book, and I've been prototyping, as you know, 2-minute reads, because you know my attention span. But I now have had, I think, I've published 20 pieces, which I'm proud of, because I've never really written. And I don't know if I told you the story of my writing. I felt I was a horrible, stupid writer, because every time I gave people stuff, and even if it was reports, they would change everything. So I convinced myself I was a horrible writer. And then, like a year ago, I decided to ask someone else to edit my work, and it came back, and very little of it was changed. And I went back to them and I said, like, what's the problem? You didn't change anything. And they said, hey, Don, that's your voice. You want to write in your voice and not in mine, and what you're saying is great. And I think that completely changed the way I thought about writing, publishing, you know. And so it's been sort of a new thing I've learned, that I can write, actually.
You're raising a massive point that we should actually talk about, everybody, which is feedback. John Hattie, it's like feedback, it's a spirit killer. I have colleagues who write all over their students' writing. And again, I'm back to sort of focus on 2 things. This is all I say to them to work on. And I give bullet 1, bullet 2. Otherwise, it's just so difficult, I think, for students to develop the courage and confidence to express themselves. Because I've read your 2-minute reads, Don, and they're great and very inspiring. And I think everybody should feel free to share and not worry that they're going to be judged for their format or whatever it is. Because I think it's the ideas that matter, and that the sharing matters as well.
Yeah, and Linda, the thing is, where there's a big sort of gap, which people don't understand, is there's that feedback. Pushback is not feedback. Exactly. And I also am upfront with that. And educators give a lot of pushback. And I'm like, let's feedback, and let's use our simple method. I like, I wish, what if, and give some construction behind what the feedback is. But that I think is another thing that people just have a hard time doing, because you need to give constructive feedback for the person to feel good about what they've done and make it better.
What do I would love to share my deck. Lucy, it's still a work in progress. Can I send it to you and then you share it? Is that good?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send it out with the show notes when I get around to the show notes.
Yeah,
and,
would you
add it to the recording? Yeah, and
yeah.
I some of the resources you mentioned I put in the chat too. So the chat, if people want to see the chat, they can grab it. It's the 3 dots at the bottom of the chat. You can
you save. What did I want to add? Yeah, so I don't know. Writing a book would be great. I love the idea of segmenting small pieces, how to do that. Finding the format, I think, is key. Anyway, this has been a wonderful opportunity to meet everybody, and thank you. Thank you so much. Really fun.
We're so glad to have you here.